Part 3 of Vox and King Beau in the Dark Place. Sorry if this seems random. I'm typing this as I go. I didn't think I'd ever be telling anyone these stories. You guys can see why I'd be freaked out, though, right? Either my brain is bringing things to life, which is terrifying, or Beau is real and he's come to collect my voice, which is terrifying, or there's something after me that's pretending to be Beau, which is terrifying. I really don't know what to do. Anyway, here's Beau in the Dark Place. A lot of the stories about Beau are typical cute stuff you'd think a little girl who loved Disney movies and ponies would talk about. In them, Beau kind of becomes like a kid himself. Not all of the stories are like that, though. One day, Beau came to me during a nap and asked me if I wanted to play instead of sleep, like we normally did. He could make things very quiet, so no one would know I was up. I told him I couldn't because I was really tired. He asked why. I told him I was having trouble sleeping because I was worried there was a monster in my closet. Now, why I was worried about a monster being in my closet when I had this thing for an imaginary friend is beyond me, but we're getting into kid logic. Anyway, this made Beau furious. He snarled and stomped and used some of his angriest voices. He told me not to worry. He would solve this problem for me. He marched right into my closet, and that was that. I didn't see Beau again for a whole week, and I started to get very worried. I called for him, sang his favorite songs, and even stayed up during nap time, even though there was no monster in my closet. But it didn't do any good. Finally, one night, I woke up to see Beau slipping through my window and sitting down on the floor next to my bed. He looked terrible. It took a few days before he had enough voices back so he could tell me the story. As the story went, Beau marched right into the closet, straight into the darkest shadows. As you guys might know, closet shadows are some of the darkest and biggest. It took a long time for him to get through, but he was determined. Nothing was allowed to scare me as long as I was his. Soon, the shadows began to groan and move around him. At first, he thought he was being ambushed, but he realized the shadows themselves were forming a tunnel. In the tunnel walls, he saw faces. Some had jaws that would never close because they had screamed for so long. Some were on long necks that stretched and tried to bite him. Some were melted into each other because they had been pushed together for so long. They had all spent so long trapped in the darkness that they had gone insane. That's when Beau knew this was no ordinary darkness. This dark place was very, very old. Of course, Beau insisted that none of this bothered him. He thought about eating some of the faces' voices just to shut them up, but they were too worn out to be powerful and probably tasted bad anyway. He walked along the tunnel until finally he came to a bigger cave. In there, the walls were made of old bones and shadows instead of just faces. Every now and then, he thought he saw one of the skulls move just a little. He said it smelled rotten, not of rotten meat or flesh, just pure decay. He called out to the back of the cave, which went on for so long he couldn't see the end. He shouted,
"I am the king of the quiet place. You are trying to steal what's mine. We must fight."
And the darkness answered. The beast of the dark place wasn't easy for him to describe. It shifted and changed when you tried to look at it, so you could only get a good fix on it out of the corner of your eyes. It crawled on 1,000 hands, dragging its bloated form across the ground like a slug. It had at least 100 eyes that looked in all directions. Some of them were gouged out, and some were spinning wildly. It had 2 mouths with dripping tongues, and lots of claws and teeth. When it spoke, it had no voice. It said,
I am the beast of the dark place. I take whatever I want.
Beau said,
That girl belongs to me, and if you take her away, you will take her voice. That's mine.
The beast laughed.
Didn't you tell her to hide under the covers? Doesn't she know to go right to sleep?
Beau growled.
She doesn't have to hide or go to sleep if she doesn't want to. That is why we will fight. I fought the bad king of the quiet place, and I can fight you too.
The beast laughed again, and that made Beau even angrier than he already was. He screamed and let loose one of his strongest, angriest voices. It bounced off the walls of the cave, crumbling bones and rocks, before breaking half of the beast's teeth. That infuriated the beast, so he attacked too. They fought mostly with fists and claws. It went on for days. Beau began to worry that even his strongest voices might not be able to keep him safe. As he began to tire, he started to make mistakes. That was how the beast managed to throw him up against a wall of the tunnel. The faces that weren't too old bit and tore at him, and the darkness started to burn into him. It was the way very cold ice burns. The beast laughed and laughed, poking at him while he struggled. That's when Beau did the one thing he thought he'd never do. He called for help. The call was so clear and pure that it cut right through the darkness. It went all the way to the quiet place, where King Beau's hunters were waiting. They charged to Beau's rescue, ready to attack. They brought him the finest voices they could find, and pulled him from the darkness, eating him away. But Beau would not let them defeat the beast. He wanted to do it himself. Instead, he had a plan.
I know how to stop you.
Beau told the beast. The beast laughed with one mouth and snarled with the other. The hunters brought Beau a huge blanket, one that was so big it was made up of at least 1,000 other blankets. He wrapped himself in it and gathered all of his power and charged right into the beast's darkest heart. Even though the beast was old and strong, it was still a closet monster. Closet monsters can't attack anything with covers over them. The beast let out a roar without a voice and burst into 1,000,000 pieces, which skittered away and dug out the walls of the cave to escape. The whole den came crashing down, and Beau and his hunters barely made it out alive. Some of his hunters might have been trapped in that darkness forever. He didn't really know. I told Beau he had been very brave and thanked him for saving me. He said he hadn't really saved anybody. But by the time the beast regrouped, I would be an old woman. Plus, he was mad he had lost a lot of good voices. So I had to sing all of his favorite songs for the next few days. Otherwise, he swore he'd just steal mine and be done with it.